again, we're playing a game while they're still making up the rules. We don't really know everything is going to happen. We project what might happen, but we're just, I always say cannabis is like an infinite game, but you have to operate in a finite arena.
Welcome back, everybody. This is John Malanca with United Patients Group. Be informed and be well. And I have a really special guest today, Bryan Buckley. Bryan Buckley is one of the founders of the Helmand Valley Growers Company, as well as Battle Brothers Foundation. And good to see you, Bryan.
Great to see you, and thanks for having me on your show.
Always. And so for our audience who never sees me in a hat, actually went to their website and for a good cause, purchased one of their hats. I'm a big hat guy. And so you can find this on their website, and I'll give you all the links on there as well. And it does go back to what Bryan and his team are doing and what they built. And so Helmand Valley Growers Company, it was conceived from the stresses of battle to help everyone battling day-to-day life. They're on a mission to help put an end to the opioid and suicide epidemic plaguing our nation's heroes. They believe that exploring the benefits of medical cannabis is the most effective way to combat these issues and to bring proper aid to those who have given so much to our great nation. The Helmand Valley Growers Club was founded by United States Special Operations veterans, the Marine Raiders, which we'll go over. And since its inception, the Helmand Valley Growers Company has been in discussions with some of the cannabis industry's top research, as well as now universities, which we'll talk about, and have developed a veteran-based protocol to effectively prove that benefits of cannabis do work. And so Helmand Valley Growers Company is supported and essentially ran by 3 Marine Raiders that served following 9/11. And so on that intro, man, welcome to the show, Bryan. Good to work with you again, as always.
Absolutely. And that hat looks great on you. Nice work.
I was so happy the other day. It came in the mail and I was like, yes.
Perfect timing.
Put that baby on, and then I wore it over the weekend, and people were like, "That's what?" And so I was able to talk about what you guys do, and education and whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm a big fan of the pebble in the pond and the ripple effects. If it's talking about a good restaurant or a good mechanic or great companies as well, and so you're a veteran.
Yep,
you're a veteran. You're a Marine Raider. You and your brothers and sisters have put your lives on the line, put your families on hold to make this nation the incredible, proud nation that we live in as well. And so, talking about that, you're now a civilian, correct?
Absolutely.
Yep. And so, can you talk about that? Did you always? I'm just going to go right in. Did you always want to serve and be in the military?
No, it really was nowhere on my 10-year plan, if you will. What happened was I grew up in an area outside Philadelphia called Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and played for a really outstanding high school football program. And my junior year during our state title run, we were in the Eastern Finals, and the coach on the other team from, I think they were called Central Dauphin, he at one point was the head coach at the Naval Academy. So I had a pretty nice game, and then next, I'm getting letters from the Naval Academy. And just remember how excited my dad was, and I'm like, "You go." I'm like, I have no desire to be in the military. I'm just going to go to college, play football, meet some girls, and do my thing, and maybe go to class if I have time. So I remember the Naval Academy called me up, and the coaches were like, "Hey, do you got a letter from a senator or a congressman?" And I'm like, that just seems like a lot of work. So I literally had no desire, and I went to the University of Massachusetts. But then after the events of 9/11, that night watching everything on TV, I walked into the bathroom and just looked at myself, and it said, it's time for me to go earn my citizenship. So I knew I was going to get involved somehow, some way, and finished out the season. I kept it very quiet from everyone, and then informed my coaches what I wanted to do, and transferred to Villanova University that next fall, and went into the ROTC program for 2 years, and then was commissioned into the Marine Corps.
9/11 changed so many lives. I didn't affect me like you, but I was living in Manhattan at the time. Wow. And just to see the shock. I mean, we were in shock of what was happening. And I remember for about even up to a month past 9/11 itself, the city was just calm. Nowadays, you go into New York, into Manhattan, and the light turns green for 0.0001 second, and the taxi guy's honking already, like, move your ass. It's like, when that happened, man, you heard no horns, you heard no yelling, you just saw just people like, wow. You'd walk by the police station, the fire stations, Union Square. Have you seen my brother? Have you seen my sister? Have you seen my mom? Have you seen my dad? And so, you're not alone. I've heard so many stories of people just saying, I got to do my duty. My duty is to protect this great country. And so you making that decision, not going through the Naval Academy, but to the Marine Corps.
Mhm.
We've talked about this before. So my cousin, little Gino, he's in school at ROTC. When he gets out, he owes the Marines 4 years. But his first year at boot camp, he came back and said, "How was it?" He goes, "Man, I wish I might have reconsidered the Marines and gone to the Navy, because there's a lot of running here in boot camp." And so, can you talk about boot camp?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, it's, obviously I'm very biased to the Marine Corps, but
of course,
we're elite, part of the military, and there's a reason for that. I mean, what drew me to the Marine Corps was, you look at the commercials they make with recruiting, where, some of the other branches will talk about, come here and you get to pay for college and get this and that. In the Marine Corps, you're running across a bridge that's over top of lava, and when you get to the other side, you fight a dragon, and when you destroy the dragon, you become a Marine. And that's just where it's like, hey, the challenge. And I always say, if you have what it takes, you too can call yourself a Marine. So just kind of had that allure to me. And I think for a lot of people that go into the Marine Corps side, it's a little bit different in attitude, but they make you earn it. And that's one thing I always tell people: when you go to boot camp, they're there to turn you into a Marine and make you into a Marine. When you go the officer route, you go to officer candidate school in Quantico, that's a tryout. They're seeing if you have what it takes to lead Marines, and you are literally being trained by guys that essentially in the next year you would be in charge of. So there's a lot of skin in the game. And when I was at Quantico, no CS, that was a total, like, what am I doing right now? Was this the right call? But once you get through, make it on the other side, and you start doing the things you do in the Marine Corps, you're like, okay, now I know why I did what I did.
So is this going on? What are we looking at? How long were you in there for?
I didn't 9 years.
9 years.
Yes.
9 years. So how long you been out then?
Got out in October 2013. So it's kind of getting crazy that, like, this October will be 9 years since, 8 years since I've been out. So it's nuts.
Let's talk about, I know your story, and it's an incredible story. And I think just for our audience here, I want to talk about, one, the brotherhood and sisterhood. You got to be politically correct. I'm not politically correct, but nowadays you got to be politically correct with everything you say. So can you say it's a brotherhood and not offend women in there, or do you also say sisterhood? Again, I'm not here to offend anyone.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like, we always say brotherhood. And like, I just look at everyone. We're all Marines. I don't care if you're man, woman, whatever. It's just kind of, we're all part of the same tribe.
We have battle brothers. That's what I was saying. And so, do you ever get shit for saying, hey,
a couple times, because we wanted battle buddies, but that was taken. So we just like, well, it's like 3 of us, there were battle brothers. That sounds right. And we kind of went through in the whole entire trademark side. No one had it. So we went there. But we've had to have some females say, like, I didn't know if you guys dealt with us because it's called Battle Brothers Foundation. But I'm like, well, that's more just the founders. We're 3 brothers who put this together. So it's wide open to everyone, every branch, all that stuff. We just want to help out our great American heroes.
Like the Manny, Mo, and Jack. Is it with the Pep Brothers? Remember
Pep Boys? Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about the men and women that you served with, and then leading from where that started after 9/11 to where we are today, and what you're doing for men and women and veterans of all ages and all, I guess, eras and wars, if you want to say. So can you talk about the people that you served with, and what that training as a Marine brought to you here on U.S. soil, again, going over to foreign soil and really having to, fight and be in some, you were in the marketplace. Are they souks? What was it called? Souks over there in Afghanistan as well? Or what's it called? The marketplace?
The bazaars.
Bazaar, excuse me.
Yep.
And so I'd love for you to share that story and injuries, and then where you are, what brought you again back here stateside, and not only one, starting a family with your wife, and where you are today with your company as well.
Yeah. That's a really interesting question. For me, when I first I wanted to be a pilot in the military. And then when I got to Villanova, I was still kind of on the Navy side of the house, but then I started seeing what the Marines were doing. It just was my calling. And I went over there, and we have a guy that's known as a assistant Marine officer instructor, which would be a gunnery sergeant. And they're going to be prior drill instructors, all that. And he served in Marine reconnaissance his entire career. So I really just thought that was great. I was like, I want to become a recon Marine myself. This was before we even were in special operations. The Marine Corps was not part of it at that time. So went through, and I just gunned to become get into the infantry. And when we went through the basic school at Quantico, every new Marine lieutenant, doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, if you're a pilot, if you're going to be a guy on the ground, you're going to go to the basic school, and they teach all of us how to be provisional rifle platoon commanders. So that was where I really started you really start seeing the leadership aspect and the things that they're training you. And you also, while you're there, you start to see people in uniforms that don't really look like they should be in a uniform. It kind of looks a little weird. And I remember I asked, I'm like, who's that? And they're like, oh, those are people from Wharton School of Business from University of Pennsylvania. They send them down here for a week to go through officer candidate school, because they think Marines do the best leadership development and the training and the way you guys have to kind of go through things. And we have a thing called a leadership reaction course, where literally there's nothing on the score sheet about you accomplishing the one course. It's all about problem solving, how you can lead, how you can be a critical thinker. Also, how can you follow and take orders from other people and try to problem solve? And when things go wrong, do you just kind of get demoralized, or do you kind of keep it up and keep going and stay optimistic and keep working the plan? And that's something I think they've really instilled at us at a young age, and just kind of stays with you your entire Marine Corps career and transitions over into the civilian life. Very much when I came back from my first deployment of Fallujah, Iraq with the infantry, had the opportunity to try out for Marine reconnaissance, made that, went right back over to Iraq. And now you're kind of doing a little more latitude they give you, and you're doing a little more critical thinking, and they kind of put you in some problem sets where they don't really have all the answers. And then definitely when you get into the special operations world, you're the one kind of developing the situation on the ground. Like, they know something's going on. They might not know who or what, but you got to go in there and figure out. And it's just a complete austere environment with you and your 12 closest friends trying to figure out how to solve this problem. And that has really kind of paid off as well, going now into what we're doing in the cannabis world, where, again, we're playing a game while they're still making up the rules. We don't really know everything that's going to happen. We project what might happen, but we're just, I always say cannabis is like an infinite game, but you have to operate in a finite arena. And that's what we kind of do now. But I just think that our training prior of how to be a critical thinker, how to be optimistic, staying positive, thinking outside the box, doing things like that have really paid dividends for us. And it's really helped us be successful to where we are right now. So it's just been, tremendous.
Well, I think teamwork, and we've talked about teamwork, and not only teamwork, being out there in the field and you leading you were a commanding officer as well, weren't you?
Yeah. Yep. I was a commander.
So leading your team, but them seeing, hey, if and you go by Buck, who's your nickname, but if Buck's doing this, I know he's got my back, and I have his back. What was your first combat experience like? I mean, that must be just. Yeah,
it's very.
Can you even prepare for that? Really? I mean,
exactly. It's kind of strange. Like, that's where people ask, like, how do you prepare for war? And it's a very personal question, meaning like you as an individual, what's going to make you fight with a happy heart? For me, I wanted to make sure everything back here in America was tied down, taken care of. So I wrote, my will was complete. I wrote my letters to my family and all that stuff. And the people, I had my funeral pretty much planned out, where it was like, hey, if this happens, my parents just have to hit a button, go, and everything else will kind of fall in place. And, I remember the first time I get into Fallujah, and I just remember the movie Enemy at the Gates, where they're fighting in Stalingrad, and it's just like craziness, and there's firefight everywhere. And, we're pulling up into Camp Fallujah, and we had artillery rounds going out. So you're hearing big booms, and you're kind of like, oh, and I don't know. I just remember I thought like the ramp was going to go down in the 7-ton and was just going to be a big fight. You just kind of got out, and people were like, here's some water, go over there. There's a chow hall. So it was kind of like, all right. Like, it was like anticlimactic. But then, the first time we got into a gunfight, that's when it got really real. One of our guys was shot by a sniper that was in one of the bazaars. And I remember when we started engaging back, the first thing I did, I started slapping my trigger, which is a bad thing to do, but I was so cranked up at that moment. I just remember I told myself, take, 3 deep breaths and then start processing the problem and get into a position where you can lead versus, you don't need to be the guy laying on the fire on the ground. And we eliminated the enemy threat, and they were able to get our casualty right back into the hospital where he needed to go to within what we call the golden hour. So we got him there in plenty of time, and he's fine and made a full recovery. But then we were just like, that deployment was a lot of IEDs, the improvised explosive devices. So you're kind of fighting an enemy that is like a phantom. I mean, you're just all suddenly bang, and like, flash of light goes and you're up in the air and you're like, holy moly. And it was just all over the place. And a lot of, mortar rounds were being shot at us as well. And, you just got to remember you have an active enemy. So they were watching us as we were trying to watch them. And literally at one point, what they were doing is they would take dry ice and they would put 2 wires. And when the dry ice would melt, the wires would connect and then it would shoot the mortar round. And they were long gone. So, and we had counter battery and all that stuff and ground sensors. So we're basically just shooting at the desert, not even doing anything because the guys are gone. So remember, we started thinking outside the box and we started putting together these teams called hunter-killer missions. And it was on a mountain ridge, and it was a main road where they were kind of getting behind another mountain ridge where they would shoot the mortars at our base. And I'll never forget the one day, it's like we're just sitting there and we had machine guns and all this stuff. And you see 2 guys pull up in a truck and they pull out the block of ice. And it's like, we've all been there, right? Where you're looking at something, you're like, no way I'm seeing this right now. Like, this is actually happening. And they pull out the mortar system to rig it up. And we're like, all right, that's positive identification. So we engaged them with machine gun fire. And, sometimes I know it sounds morbid and everything with, what goes on in combat, but you got to kind of laugh at sometimes some of the things you see. And it was these 2 Al-Qaeda guys, and just the one guy just was not his day to die. I mean, he looked like Neo in the Matrix. I mean, he is moving every which way. Bullets are flying all around him, going in between his legs. And then I remember we shot the other guy in his leg, and it kind of ran up to the back of his, back of his hamstring, and he's down. And the other guy's running away, and he stops, and you see his friend kind of put his hand up in the air, like, help me, help me. And he ran back and he ripped the guy's coat off and then ran away. And just left the guy there just like hanging out. And I'm like, man, that's one of the dirtiest moves I ever saw. So like, that was not good teamwork right there. Where guys like, I'm going to steal your coat while you're shot. So, I mean, we took care of that. But, I think for me, what was difficult during that deployment was when I came back. And that was really like a whole new experience. I was definitely a different person. There was things where I was driving down the road. If I would see a bag and stuff, I would probably swerve out of the way, and just things that we were doing while we were in Iraq. I didn't like to be around crowds, kind of made me a little paranoid. I wanted to make sure I knew where exits were and all that stuff. And that was a kind of tough transition. It probably took me about a good 30 to 45 days to kind of start calming down a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I went right back into it for combat and was kind of just, getting ready for the next deployment. Thank
you for talking about this, because I think talking about things, at least for me, especially even losing my wife to cancer, people say, I'm sorry, I don't mean to. I said, I enjoy talking about it because it keeps her alive. This is part of me and what makes me, and I'm certain what makes you as well. Let's talk about you being injured over there.
Yeah.
And you weren't shot, but it was shrapnel, correct? You were shot at, excuse me.
Yeah, so it's basically what they call an underbarrel grenade launcher. So obviously the enemy uses a weapon system called an AK-47, and it's basically a little grenade launcher that goes underneath of it. And just like we have what we call our 203, we shoot grenades out. They did the same thing. And again, this is kind of another kind of comical moment. And I know people just kind of say, it's war, it's got to be all dramatic, but not really. I mean, it's like there are moments where you're going to laugh about some of the things and like the circumstances, but it was just a very, very hot day in Helmand province in Afghanistan. I mean, humidity, like 100% type of thing. And I'm next to one of my dog handlers, Joe, and then one of my corpsmen, Max. And I remember I'm just talking to Max and I'm like, man, I mean, it is just like, we've all had those days where your mouth is just like insanely dry and you just can't quench your thirst. And I looked at Max and I'm like, man, what I wouldn't give for an ice cold Coca-Cola right now. And as soon as I said that, the UGL ran right by my head. It sounded like a lot like a a fly ball baseball coming back by you with a bad attitude. And that thing cranked off right at my feet. And it was just basically sent shrapnel all throughout myself, Max, and Joey. I took shrapnel through both legs, in my back, and then in my left part of my head. Max lost part of his tricep, and then Joey took some that went right up underneath his armor into his stomach, which was really bad. So he just collapsed and went right down. And Max and I grabbed him to move in a covered position. And at this point, it literally, I tell people what the Helmand province looks like. When you're in the Helmand River Valley, it is a full canopy jungle. So it literally looked like giants had their hands on the trees and they were just shaking it. We had so much small arm fire, rocket propelled grenades, and mortars flying around us that I finally now understand what it must be like to be inside a popcorn machine, because the ground underneath of us was just, everything was flying up on us. And I had 2 other maneuver positions. So we were all just, it was a complex ambush. I mean, they were on top of us. So I had to give a brevity code to my higher command to let them know that we were about to get overran. And when that happens, everyone gets off my radio freak, and every available aircraft in Afghanistan starts flying Mach whatever to get to us to help us out. And then you got to be kind of like a traffic control cop, where you're just basically doing your angel stack, and we'll just tell them, hey, you go at 15 grand, you go at 14 grand, and we start deconflicting that way. And what I was amazed at was, the first thing I had to do, I had to give a MIST report. So it's mechanism, injury, signs, symptoms, and treatment. And at the end of it, you give a battle roster number. So mine would be Buckley in my last 4. So it'd be Bravo Uniform 0429. And that way the doctors back and rear know exactly what they got thrown in the helo to, help you out and stuff. So I went through and gave the 2 other guys MIST reports and report their battle roster. And then at this point, I'm just looking at myself as the guys are putting tourniquets on me. And I'm just kind of like, well, I got this going on. I got that. And I'm like, battle roster number, Bravo Uniform 0429. And you heard everyone get quiet on the radio. They're like, say that again. And I'm like, Bravo Uniform 0429. They're like, can you say that again? And I'm like, hey guys, it's me. I'm shot. I'm like, I'm in the fight. I'm like, I just need you guys' help. And they're like, we're on it. And called my number 2 guy up and just said, hey, and his name's Ronnie. I was like, Ronnie, I'm lit up. I'm like, I'm going to keep going as long as I can, but just listen to what I'm saying on the radio. You're going to take command. Your call if you want to come back out tonight, like do an emergency extract. And then I pulled one of my other guys right next to me. I'm like, here, just stand next to me. I'm like, because I've never been shot before, so I don't know if I'm going to fall over and forget who I am for 30 minutes. And we both looked at each other and started laughing. And I'm like, well, here we go. And we were in the fight, and we just started moving the enemy into the advantageous area. And what was amazing to me was how calm and cool everyone was on the radio. No one was freaking out. No one was panicking. Everyone was just simply talking. And I always tell people, like, your training prior is what makes the difference. Michael Jordan just didn't show up at nighttime and just throw number 23 on his chest and dominate. He worked hard. I mean, he had one of those great commercials about how many times he's failed the final shot, and that's what drives him. And everyone would think us as like special operators, we're going to be doing all this high speed whiz bang stuff. But literally the first things we start doing is we're like, okay, this is how you take apart your weapon system. And it's something we did in boot camp. And it's just the brilliance in the basics. We'd go patrol at nighttime with no weapons on, and no radios, just so we could kind of move and see how each other moved and use hand-arm signals. And then we started ramping up. So we really put a premium on being brilliant at the basics and just bringing overwhelming lethality to the battlefield. And that all just paid off. And like I said, the enemy who started the fight didn't end it. We did. I mean, we took care of them. So now it's my turn to get extract. And I'm, hobbling. I got a tourniquet on my left leg. I got metal hanging out of my head. I remember I put my hand on a wall for the helo and the wall collapsed. So now I got Afghan hornets coming out and they're stinging me. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So then I get in the helo. We have myself.
Real hornets, insects, not
like these things are angry. I mean, trust me, they were not happy about anything going on. So we're on the helo. I got a dog with me because we got to bring a dog back with us because Joe was his handler. So if he's down, the dog has to come back with him. And then we got Max is on there, and we're all just kind of scrunched onto the Black Hawk. And I'm looking down at my legs, and I see my right calf is behind my knee, and the other one just is in agony pain from the tourniquet. And I point to the PJ, the Air Force guys. I'm like, hey, and he goes, oh, dude, that looks like a terrible wound. I'm like, no, it's a tourniquet. I'm like, get that off. And he's like, all right, pulled out a blade and sliced it off, and everything was fine. And then he's like, hey, do you want some ketamine? And I'm like, I don't even know what that is, but why not? Like, now my fun meter was pegged. I was starting to feel the pain at this point. When it first happened, it was the amount of adrenaline that hit my body. And again, I always tell people, take 3 deep breaths and to slow things down and process, and it's going to be better for you. So now we're coming into the hospital. I know the hospital very well, but it was almost like an out of body experience. I'm kind of like half blacked out or something from the ketamine. So they're helping me get out of the helo. I go in to get a CAT scan, and one of the British nurses walks in and she goes, "I need to talk to Captain Buckley alone," and everyone get out. And then she goes, "Bryan, do you have HIV or AIDS?" I'm like, "No, I literally just got tested before I came here." And she's like, "We're gonna have to test you again because one of the nurses, he sliced his hand on the shrapnel that was coming out of your head. So he bled into you and you bled into him." Ooh. And I'm like, all right. And then now I'm getting pulled into surgery, and the doctor comes in. He's like, "Man, your left leg isn't looking good. I might have to take it." And I'm like, okay. So I've been shot. I've been stung by hornets, might have AIDS. And now you're going to say you're going to take my left leg. I'm like, "Doc, that's it." I'm like, "If my left leg's gone, when I wake up, I'm going to beat your ass with it." He starts laughing. He's like, "Happy thoughts," and just, put the gas on me. And woke up from surgery a couple hours later and everything could move. And they were getting us ready to move us to Kandahar, then up to Germany, then back over, we'd probably go to Bethesda at that point. And my doctor just looked at me. He goes, "They want to send you home, but what do you want to do?" And I'm like, "What are my options?" He's like, "You probably should go home, but if you want to stay, I'll keep you." And I'm like, "Then I'm staying." He goes, "I figured you're going to say that." And he's like, the nurses were like, no, he needs to go. And he goes, "Now he's my patient. He's staying." He's like, "We're going to do another surgery on you about 24 hours. And then after that, I'm going to give you about 48-hour break. And then I got to do a third surgery on you." And we went through all that. And then the amazing nurses and doctors there just, took care of me, put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And the next week I was back on doing another raid, didn't miss a single mission. They just made me do 20 pull-ups and run 3 miles. And they're like, "All right, you're good to go." You're like, "You're going to have some discomfort, but it is what it is, and just figure it out." And I was just very blessed to have that opportunity to kind of get back out there. It was a little bit hard for my mom. I don't think she was too thrilled, but I just said, "That's the son that you raised." So, I'm where I need to be.
Proud of that. So you really weren't out of commission after all that. You were out, like you said, a week. Most in my mind, that hearing that story, I'm thinking, God, how long was he out of commission for? How old were you at that time? In your 20s?
I was 32.
Okay. Were you an older Marine in that position?
No. I mean, we all pretty much at that point were in our low 30s. I was a senior captain, so I was about to pick up major the next 2 years. So yeah, I was just kind of getting to that. I mean, I was probably a little bit older. Most are probably 30, but it's nice when you transfer and you see all the classes that don't count, and you got to, you're really trying to play makeup at Villanova. So
yeah,
slowed me up by about a half a year on that side.
Good. I was going to go into call it. First, let me say, you were originally stationed. You've been stationed in Africa, Asia, Iraq, and then Afghanistan.
Yeah.
The Helmand Valley Growers Company. I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but can you you mentioned Helmand Valley when you were going in there for the raid? Can you talk about what and where Helmand Valley is? And
love to. Yeah, so the Helmand Province is in the southwest part of Afghanistan. It borders up right by Pakistan. The reason it was by far the most volatile area in all of Afghanistan, and that's not taken away from anyone anywhere else, but the Helmand was just a whole different arena. Now I still got buddies who are still in, and they say when they bring up the Helmand, people think like the boogeyman lives there. It's just is that infamous. And why it was such a contested area is you have the Helmand River Valley, which the Taliban would go back into Pakistan for the winter months. And then when spring would come up, they would come up, make the farmers throw out their poppy. They would cultivate the poppy into heroin, and then they would sell it, and they would get taxes from it. And that's how they pretty much fueled their insurgency. So it was a really, really difficult area. The Taliban didn't want to give it up. Obviously, we didn't want them to have money. So, and then you got literally farmers who were just Afghan civilians just trying to, get their next meal. I mean, they're not really thinking about 401ks in that country. They're like, "Hey, I've had breakfast and now I hope I can find some lunch eventually." So they're in a tough spot where they're just trying to make money. And it's not like you can go in there and burn the poppy fields, because now they're not going to make money. And chances are you're going to make about a dozen more Taliban from that, because they're going to say, "Well, the Taliban will pay me and I'll go work with them." I mean, it's just a very bizarre situation. What it is very difficult during what we would call the fighting season, which would usually kick off in May and would roll through till about the end of October. And especially that summer, the summer 2012 was, and I tell people I'm not bragging. This was just told to me by a couple of generals that it was the bloodiest summer for U.S. Special Operation Forces since the Vietnam War. And within that time with the company I was in, there were 3 teams with 3 team commanders. And when we got there in May, by June, Derek Herrera, who's a team commander, was paralyzed and he was sent back home. July 12th, I got wounded. I was able to stay. And then August 10th, another team commander, Matt Manukian, who actually introduced me to my wife, Briar, he was killed. And it was almost unheard of to have 3 captains, have that happen to. And then you had all the guys, the Green Berets, the SEALs, other Marine Raiders. I mean, everyone was it was just a really, really, really tough summer. And it's a tough time of year for all of us this time. I mean, literally yesterday marked the 9-year anniversary of the one Marine I lost under my command, Sergeant Josh Ashley, who was one of our dog handlers. We were on a patrol in this area called Zombele. We would pretty much walk where humans wouldn't walk because the enemy with IEDs were, typically on roads and routes and stuff like that. So we're walking through a riverbed and, we're ready to cut across, and we sent the dog, Josh's dog, Sirius. He went up, and usually the dog will do a little dance if there's an IED, and we just kind of know to avoid it. He went up there, and everything looked good. So Josh is like, hey, I'll go get him. And he walked up there, and Josh took a step back, and crank, it went. And he became a triple amputee. So we had to put 6 tourniquets on him. At that point, Sirius ran into essentially what was a minefield, and we had to go in there and basically what we got on our hands and knees and start sweeping to make sure we're not getting hit IEDs and go bring Sirius back. Sirius kind of knew something was going on with Josh, so he was a little bit panicking. We got him away. We got Josh onto the helo. He rallied a little bit, but he didn't make it to the hospital. And, it was just a tough one, but it was just a random kind of golden egg IED that was put out there. There was no rhyme or reason for it to be where it was. But those are some of the things that we were facing every day. I mean, I'll never forget, we had a SEAL team come in to help out. And it's actually where Congressman Dan Crenshaw, he was actually on that team. This is the incident where he lost his eye, was in the Helmand province. We were telling them like, hey, you guys, the sun's about to come up. You guys are going to need to get inside some shelter where you get turned into a pumpkin. And it's like, and do not walk through a doorway. And their one interpreter did. He evaporated, and Dan took the blast and, almost lost both eyes. And I'll never forget talking to his commander, this other guy, Bryan, and we were pretty good friends. And he was like, and Kandahar's just due east of Helmand. I mean, it's the next province over. And he's like, man, is that what you guys have to deal with every day? I'm like, that's the Helmand. And he's like, dude, that's just an unreal place where you guys are.
Are we still in there?
No, US? No, not really in Helmand anymore. Pretty much everyone's consolidated around Kabul into the where the embassy is and stuff like that. But when you served in our unit in 1st Marine Raider Battalion, when you served in the Helmand province, you became part of the Helmand Valley Gun Club, and you get an HVGC tattoo. So that's where kind of the genesis of Helmand Valley Growers Company came, is we threw HVGC up on the wall, and we're like, Helmand Valley Growers Company. We're like, that sounds really cool. We're like, let's go talk to the guys, make sure they're good with it. And then when we told them what we wanted to do and the mission that we had behind it, they all loved it. And they're like, hey, when we get out, can we get jobs with you? And we're like, that's not a problem. But, just like you say, you love speaking about your wife. I mean, yeah. I love, talking about the Helmand Valley Gun Club and Helmand Valley. And that's one of the things I think this company will do, is kind of keep that on people's radar and never forget the great men and women who gave so much and sacrificed so much in that valley. Maybe some good, I mean, history will tell us whatever we did over there, if it worked or not, but we know we're going to accomplish this mission by showing that medical cannabis is a viable alternative to help reduce the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. So maybe that could be the goodness that comes out of the Helmand Valley is,
what a great way to look at it, because, people always ask me, how do you continue on doing the work that you do when it worked on others, but it didn't work on your wife? Yeah. And that's a tough thing. It took me, quite a bit, but hearing the people that I have worked with for the past 11 years, yeah. I still get calls, Bryan.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to thank you. I spoke with you and your wife about 7 years ago, and I just got clear scans again. And is Corinne there? Can I speak with her? And I'm like, you don't know, do you? And I tell her, and she's crying, and she says, oh my God, your wife, when I was diagnosed, I was scared.
Yeah,
I was scared. And I called your office. Your wife spoke to me. And I remember she said, your wife spoke to me. She says, may I call you from the car because I have to go speak in San Francisco? And she goes, John, your wife got in the car and spoke with me and calmed me down the whole way and directed me on how this industry works, what to do, what questions to ask, what to avoid.
Yeah.
And I'm alive today. And so I loved hearing that. She said, I'm sorry to bring, I said, no, I love hearing these. I don't, I mean, you don't, I worked with my wife 24/7, but I wasn't
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
the, she still had a life,
Yeah.
but it's still, it's great to hear how many people that she touched, and
Yeah.
you talking about your brothers and sisters out there, Matt, who introduced you to your wife.
Yeah.
It's sad. You mentioned at the beginning, you said Joel, but at the beginning you said Joe, who had
Yeah.
the shrapnel under. Did he make it?
He did. I mean, it was one of those things where, not to get too dramatic, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, when you're in the business I once was, you kind of know when death's knocking on the door. And I remember I just kind of looked at him, and you just see that green tint start coming over his body, and you're like, we're there. And I remember talking to, this is kind of comical too. It's like I was talking to the Medivac thing, and I told the pilots to put them on like a 5-mile radius outside of where we were, because we were still dropping ordnance. And they kind of just came in for whatever reason. So we were dropping these things called Griffin missiles out of a daytime AC-130. And it was like the big bullet little sky scenario. You literally saw the Griffin go down, and then you saw our helo fly right underneath of it. And I'm like, oh my God, we just almost blew up our Medivac. Like,
Oh, wow.
could you imagine that one?
Wow.
So, they came in, and we got Joey right up there. And I mean, obviously all the attention went to him.
Yeah.
I started seeing his color get better.
Yeah.
But he literally, there's 2 weeks in his life he doesn't remember anything. He goes, the last thing I remember was us sitting there talking, and the next thing you know, I woke up and I'm in Bethesda. And he's like, and I had no idea how I got there. But to kind of finish that part where I was telling you before about, telling Max I could go for an ice cold Coke. I got injured again towards the end of October with an ankle injury, and I had to stay on it for 2 days. But I dislocated and had a spiral fracture. So they brought me back into Germany.
Hold on. Tell them how you were on the helicopter coming down, and you thought it was one step, and it was actually 15 feet.
Yeah. So it was kind of an emotional mission. So we just lost Matt Manukian. I brought Matt back to San Francisco. We did the funeral, and then I did a eulogy, and then the next day I was back on a plane flying back to Afghanistan. And what happened with Matt was, it was during the times of, people remember the insider attacks. It was called like green on blue, like green's our allies and we're blue. And these guys were dressed up as, this Taliban member was dressed up as a Afghan police officer. And so what Matt's mission was, we were doing the raids on high value individuals, like the Taliban commanders. Matt was doing stuff called a village stability platform, where they're in there garbed up, full beard. They're making a well, standing up a police force, and everything else in between. And it's difficult because you don't want to make your base like Fortress Europe. Like, you want to make it inviting for the locals to come and have meetings with you and stuff. So what happened was, this one Afghan police, quote unquote, he knocked on the operations door. The team chief, Ryan Jeske, was like, can I help you? And he just kind of looked around all scared, and he looked at Matt. He goes, hey, Matt, do you have a meeting with this guy? And Matt's like, no. He's like, all right, he's probably lost. I'm going to take him back to the police station. Well, then they heard gunfire outside, and they thought, okay, maybe just a negligent discharge from one of the Afghans. It happens. And the next thing you know, rounds started coming through the building. So Matt ended up in a corner, which is not a good place to be inside a gunfight in a house. Corners attract a lot of bullets. And there were 2 other guys, and basically this guy was running in. Matt pulled out his 45, told his other 2 teammates, he's like, guys, get out of here. And you could literally see where the AK rounds were chasing these guys out of the room. And Matt started engaging him with his 45. Matt was already wounded. At this point, the Taliban came up, and basically they shot him in point blank range. And Sky Moat, who was the EOD chief, he was in another room. Now, Sky could have ran out the back door and been safe, but he decided to go into the room to see, like, help Matt. He came in, and unfortunately, this guy had the beat on him and shot him. And then he ran out and jumped over a barrier, and there was Taliban waiting for him. And they drove him away. Just as all the other team guys were coming into the room. Eventually, they went outside, and they found Ryan. Ryan was shot in the back from this guy. So Ryan was still alive. They got him into the hospital area at the base, but he didn't make it much longer. About a couple minutes later, and he passed away. And then Brian Jakes, he was shot in the arm. So this one night, they lost a team commander, team chief, EOD chief, and an element leader. And that's a big blow to a special operations team. So when we got back, we got word where this guy might have been. So we went up and did a mission on him. And Yeah, we're flying in. We browned out in a helicopter, and basically it was like a road plateau, another plateau, then a big plateau, and we were supposed to land on that third plateau. Well, the pilot was flying off instruments, and he landed on the second plateau. So the ramp dropped, and I'm the first one out, and kind of did my look around, and like with my night vision on, all I could see was this dust flying at me. I'm like, but you got to take a leap of faith sometimes. And I jumped out, and that's when I started rolling down the windows, type of thing. I was like, I'm falling like far. And it was about a 15-foot drop, and stuck the landing. Rucksack went one way, then it flipped the other way. That's when I just heard everything kind of erupt in my leg. I ended up on the street, which is not a good place to be.
Yeah.
And the rest of the team came out. We got my rucksack off and got my weapon. I stood up, and it really just felt like broken glass in my ankle. But we have a big black helicopter, and we have an active enemy coming after us who would love to shoot that thing. So I'm like, get the helicopter out of here, and we got to go. And we conducted the raid. I remember our breaches were failing. I'm just laying this little wadi, which is like a little cutout in the desert. And you're just like, man, when it rains, it pours. And we did the raid. We go in the house. Put the guys out in a patrol. And I'm like, find another LZ and I'll get out of here tomorrow. And when the guys came back, they're like, there is one LZ. And we were only out there for 48 hours. So I couldn't do like an LAX thing where I had a helicopter landing there every night. That's just asking for problems.
How far was that from where you were?
Oh boy, that was probably about 500 meters, I would say. Maybe a little bit more, but yeah, my boot came off and that thing was just swollen up. So I just started putting my Chuck Taylors I always carried with me, put those on. We took some duct tape and we kind of did a quick spat job. And that's how I operated for the next couple of days. And then when I came off the objective, guys were waiting for me with some crutches, went back, had some pizza, then went to the emergency room. And good friend of mine, I actually talked to her last night, Stephanie. She's an Army major, but she was one of my nurses. And we still keep in touch. We're reflecting on that, but she was the one who's like, hey, I'm not a doctor and I can't tell you, but I know you're saying it's a high ankle sprain. And she's like, this isn't a high ankle sprain. And then, ultimately the next day they're like, hey, we're going to do a quick surgery, put your ankle back in place. And then we got to start kind of looking to get you out of here. So, that was kind of the end of my Afghan deployment that time. But, it was funny, like, again, talking with Stephanie and talking about funny stories, I mentioned when I was shot, I was on ketamine. I was kind of pretty much blacked out. And she's like, I just remember the time when they finally ripped off all your clothes. And she's like, you're just in your birthday suit on the operation table. And she's like, and you just looked over all the nurses and you said, take it in, ladies. This is 32 years of excellence. I'm like, and they read that to me the next day. And I'm like, I don't want any more painkillers. I was like a drunk guy at church, I'm like, holy moly. So we still get a good laugh at that one.
Well, good. I'm glad, the outcome was that.
Yeah.
They deemed you, the Veteran Health Agency deemed you 100%, not really, but eventually 100% disabled.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what 80% means, 50% means, and 100% means, not only for you, but what you are fighting for now for other veterans that are coming up and not being deemed 100%?
Yeah, it's really like, again, it's kind of such a whirlwind when you're transitioning. And that's, again, one of the reasons why, like with Ballard Brothers, we want to kind of get a active duty person about a year out before they are going to retire, just so we make sure that all the paperwork's good and they know all their benefits that they should have. So, I'm doing my thing. I had a job lined up for me waiting afterwards, and I really wasn't too concerned about things. And you go through your VA physical, and next thing you know, they're like, okay, like you get your rating and they're like, you're 80% disabled. And you're like, oh, okay, fine. I'm 80% disabled. And you get a tax-free paycheck. And I just didn't really think about it. But then as kind of the years went on, I started seeing other people get 100% disability. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, I've been shot. I got a Purple Heart, all these other things. And I was in special operations, yet there may be, and I'm not taking any ways from people in admin, they do great work, but they're not on the battlefield fighting, but they're walking away with 100%. So that's when I had a conversation with a friend of mine in the VA, and he's like, listen, you guys kind of get screwed out there in California. He's like, when they brief you guys, they just brief you as a Marine. He's like, trust me, when a Navy SEAL's getting briefed in front of the board, it's like fireworks and everyone knows exactly this person was a Navy SEAL. Okay. So that kind of, motivates them with the disability. So he's like, if you can fly out here to Boston, he's like, we can reevaluate you. And I went out there, and, by the time I was done after 2 days, you add all my points up, I was like 360% disabled. And you then start seeing the benefits that not only that you get, but your family gets. And so now, it's like my kids will most likely get a full scholarship to college.
Yeah.
My wife, she can go get another degree if she feels like it. All their insurance is paid for, like everything medically is taken care of. Some states, if you're 100% disabled, you don't have to pay property taxes and stuff like that. So it really is just a tremendous benefit. And that's why when we sit down and talk with people who are getting ready to transition, I'm like, hey, it's not time to be a tough guy. All right. Like if your back hurts, tell them your back hurts. You can't get help unless you call for it. You were doing this as a special operator. I'm sorry to tell you, but you got post-traumatic stress, and this is why. And these are the stressors you've already hit, and it's okay. And now we're seeing, these men and women getting the benefits that they deserve. And like I said, it's just not about them. It's about the family and what that can do for their life. And, these guys deserve it more than anything. I mean, I got my college loans were forgiven when I got percent disabled. And I joked, I was like, I wasn't on the battlefield yelling oxy-free, so I could get my college paid for, but hey, it happened, and let's take care of this. And it's just been tremendous. And without that benefits that I have right now, I don't think I'd be here right now talking to you, because that gave me some flexibility to go off and do some things, because I have not even given myself a paycheck ever. So, I mean, we're just putting everything right back into Helmand Valley and to Battle Brothers so we can help out other veterans for different needs.
Let's talk about this. Thank you for sharing what led you to where you are today. And I know I did kind of a Cliff Note version of that. And for our audience, we are doing a partnership with Helmand Valley, with Bryan and the Helmand Valley Growers Club and his brothers and sisters, as well as the Battle Brothers Foundation. And so you'll see more of an in-depth interview on that side. Your injuries, your pain, the injuries aren't always on the outside.
Exactly.
A lot of injuries are on the inside, and you've been quoted saying, enduring pain and discomfort is doable for me. I've learned to live with it the best I can. However, witnessing my fellow veterans in physical and emotional pain to such grave levels that suicide is perceived the best option is something I could not and cannot accept. And so having that mindset of wanting to come back and help others, because it doesn't just, like I said, it doesn't just stay on the battlefield and you come back and you're back in society. Everything's great. And like you said, noises, crowds, bags on the street, a stranger looking at you differently. I mean, that must just, I'm still, can you talk about, you said PTS, and I was taught by a veteran years ago, it's not PTSD, it's PTS. And so can you talk about that before we go into the Helmand Valley Growers Club and what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way we look at it. It's not a disorder. It's just something that's going on with you, and we all suffer with it. And that's why we say, hey, it's just post-traumatic stress. And, again, it's like, this isn't just a military issue. It's a human condition, and we all can suffer from it. And that's why part of it is like, it's okay to say that you have it. It's okay to get help, because you can look at stats now. There's been over 30,000 suicides since October 2001 when we got into Afghanistan. There's been about 7,500 deaths on the battlefield.
Repeat that. 30,000
suicides since October 2001. And since that same time period, about 7,500 servicemen and women have died on the battlefield. So you think about, in theory, it's more dangerous for us being back here stateside than it is to be on the battlefield. And that's why I tell people, like, you're coming back home, you might be out, but you're still fighting a battle, and you're fighting the battle within. And you never get rid of your demons. You just got to learn how to fly above them. And that's, again, where we just kind of saw what cannabis was doing for myself, what it was doing for Andy. We're just like, this is amazing, but let's push the dial here and do something pretty incredible, where we're just not going to advocate and try to convince people in legislations. We're going to actually prove that we'll do the work for you. Here it is. Now let's go move forward and do FDA trials. Because I would love for the day when you can just go into a VA pharmacy and you just see all the great cannabis strains up there that's going to help women just live the life of peace that they deserve.
Yeah. Was cannabis your lifestyle before your injury?
No, never. It's like, I was always an athlete growing up. I was pretty straight edge, to be honest with you. In college, I'd had some drinks, and that was kind of my thing.
Yeah.
And then I was getting into the military, and you really don't think about cannabis because you can't use it. So I had friends who consumed. I didn't really care. I mean, it never really caused any problems, and it relaxed them. Great. But when I remember, like, the first time, I was like, I kind of felt a little anxiety holding my first joint. I'm like, oh man, like, I don't know, should I do this? And like, I remember dare classes and all that stuff growing up. And then the first time I did it, I went, holy moly. I mean, just how relaxed I got. And then having that first night of full sleep when I can't remember the last time I had a full night of sleep. And that's when I was like, this is something pretty incredible. And we got to share this and do it the right way.
And doing the right way is what really has stood out from what I, from our relationship and seeing what you have done with your fellow teammates, I should say, having a purpose, having a purpose. I mean, even when Corinne passed away, I'm thinking, I lost my identity. I'm not the husband anymore. We were a husband-wife team running United Pace Group. I'm just John now. And so having this has really helped put me on the path of having a purpose.
Yeah.
And so you coming back home, not only you, but your fellow veterans, men, women, and even the family members, coming back, the family members are so happy to see you. They hug. You're like, I'm not ready for this. And I'm certain you've had those discussions. And then having you come back and going, great, I got to get a job. I'm a civilian now, and whatever that may be, if it's working for someone or being inside and taking order from some little peon yelling at you, thinking, you don't have a bloody effing clue what I've been through, man. And you have to keep that calmness in front of you. And I'm certain that, there are some tough times, but having this opportunity to pay it forward for others that have gone through this, not only for others who have gone through this, but the family members. And I know you work with a lot of, the people left behind sometimes, hearing Matt, was Matt married? Was Joe married? I mean,
no, none of them. I mean, it was kind of sad. I mean, Matt was probably getting ready to transition out. I think he was going to go to law school, and his high school sweetheart, they started kind of reconnecting, and they were going to make another go at it. And it happened. I mean, it was the same thing with Josh Ashley, who we lost, like I said, 9 years ago yesterday. He wasn't a Raider. He was with the conventional Marine forces, but we needed more dog handlers, and he came over, and he's from Rancho Cucamonga. And I mean, Josh was just a brick shit house. I mean, he was just a stud, and he was kicking ass. And I'm like, hey man, you are going to try out for the Raiders when we get back. And he's like, you really think I can make it? I'm like, I know you'll make it, but we need guys like you here. And I just kind of gave him a hug, and I was like, all right, we'll talk soon. And that was it. That night we lost him. So it was just tough. And those are some of the times where, I think about Matt's mom, Patty Manukian, who's actually a justice here in California. But she would just tell me, with the whole entire, I think it was like the Kennedy White House, and they called it Camelot. And she's like, whenever I hear that song, I think of all you guys, because she's like, I just can't believe there was that one bright, shiny moment where all these great guys were all together doing amazing things. And then it just ended, and we all went like our separate ways. She goes, you don't see that very much in this world. And she's like, it was just a very special group of people. So, just honored to be part of it. But it was really tough. Like I said, you lose that identity, but through the efforts of what we're now doing here, I still feel like I'm serving our country just in a different way. And, I was talking to you a little bit beforehand. I went up to UC Irvine Health Center yesterday, and Dr. Marcelo Dominguez, who's going to be the principal investigator for our research. I mean, I walk in UC Irvine Health, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm walking into a university hospital, and they're going to back up our medical cannabis research. And she's like, yep, here we are. Let's take a walk around and meet all the medical stuff. And, it's happening. And, that was like, God, I think 2016, we came up with this idea, and now you're starting to see it start panning out. It's amazing,
It is amazing when you do stuff like this, because there's times that, I've been frustrated, in the work that we do. And Corinne would say, John, let's go back 3 years. Did you think ever in your mind you'd be here where you are in 3 years? It's like, no, you're right. So she was always the positive one going, and it sounds like the same thing with you. And so, I don't want to. So Helmand Valley Growers Club, HGVC, an acronym, is. Can you talk about the products, and then I want to talk about the Battle Brothers Foundation, and where you set it up in 3 tiers for veterans: personal, medical as well as economic.
Yeah.
But if you talk about Helmand Valley, Growers Company,
Yep.
and what you do there and giving back, and then also what led into the Battle Brothers Foundation.
Yeah, it's been great here what we've been able to accomplish at Helmand Valley. I would be remiss if I didn't thank George and Cody Sadler, who are the founders of Platinum Vape. They wanted to help us out with Battle Brothers with some donations. And then we started talking about this idea we had with Helmand Valley and how we want to do this research. And they fell in love with it. And they said, hey, why don't you guys get in here? We're going to back you guys up. Just make us whole when you start making sales, but we don't need any profits. That's yours. And I think we were probably one of brands in America that literally could put their product on a shelf costing them $0. I mean, it's been incredible, the opportunity they gave us. So we started off pretty small. We just wanted to get some feedback from veterans of what type of terpenes were working well for them. And we came out with 3 distillate pens where we had Afghanimal, which has become like our flagship, which has been doing tremendous for a lot of veterans with post-traumatic stress. Then we had like a sour diesel, and then we had a purple train wreck. And then we kind of started expanding our SKUs, like what more feedback we're getting from veterans, what people wanted to see. And then we started moving into the pre-roll realm just because those have been real popular. Same thing with same mindset of like what is working best for the veterans. And then we got into live resin, which I think is going to be the next big thing. I think that'll start eating up some of the distillate market share. But it's just been great. And we're going to myself, along with George and Cody, we have a partnership, and we're about to open up our Lake Elsinore project where we'll have a 5,000 square foot cultivation site and along with a storefront. And Andy Myers will be the head cultivator there. And we look forward to bringing more veterans to get them some work and teach them how to grow cannabis. And, at the end of the day, we just want to have veterans making medicine for veterans. And it's just Helmand Valley has been really great. It is our for-profit arm, but we like to call it our for-purpose arm because it's helping us do a lot of good things on the Battle Brothers side.
Let's talk about for-profit, for-purpose, and your 501c3 giving 100% of your profits, 100% of your profits back to veterans in need, and not just the Afghan veterans, but veterans of all eras, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like one of our proud moments is we took care of a Vietnam veteran. He was a Blue Water Navy, definitely got hit by some Agent Orange. Unfortunately, Congress, I think this year they finally recognized Blue Water Navy and Agent Orange, but they weren't then. And guy has Parkinson's, back is fused. He's had multiple brain surgeries, and he just couldn't get the help he needed. And it took us about 6 months, but we got him up to 100% disability. And, he got a lot of money went into his bank account. And then people came in like gangbusters and started refurbishing his house and getting him the appropriate wheelchair. And it changed his life. And, I don't care how much money someone could give me. That was probably one of the best paychecks of my life, was just seeing this great warrior finally get the care that he deserved.
You say great warrior finally getting the care that he deserves and he or she deserves. Mm-hmm. That must be so tough. You give your life to this country, you go out there and you do this, and I don't want to say you come back and get forgotten or time. People just, I keep on bringing back Corinne.
Yeah.
Because it's what I know. And I, I've been guilty of it because people just go on with their lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for having someone like you and your organization to help, that must have been like, really? All these years later, someone's actually caring about me, thinking about me. And, so I applaud you guys doing that, men and women. Yep. Does the government get involved and help in any way? Do they know about what you're doing?
I think the government has an idea what we have going on. Yeah. They really, again, we do talk with people in the VA and just and we want to be very transparent with them about what we're doing. But then being a federal agency, they can't really touch us. We do talk with politicians. We actually just had a call with Senator Kelly out of Arizona, Democrat, today. We're going to go out there May 22 and do another lobby day, which would be good because we're going to kind of have more of our research ready to go. But we're here to make friends with both Democrats and Republicans and just solve a problem. And so we're just happy to do it. But it is a little ridiculous that we have to do it. It's like you can wait around for the government all you want. But again, that's why I say, hey, it's a blessing that you were born in the United States of America. because you can be here and you can make your way and get up there if you want to, if you work hard and go after something.
Yeah.
And we, like I said, we identified a problem and we're like, all right, let's find a solution and let's go through it the right way. And through some twists and turns and fate or whatever you want to call it, things are starting to line up where I think we're going to have a very, very good argument here with the government to make medical cannabis legal.
You talk about research and benefits. Have you seen, what are the numbers regarding the benefits when it comes to cannabis for PTS?
Yeah. You know, we're seeing, we're seeing is from the Israeli side. So we're working with a firm called Niametic Healthcare and Research Services, and they published in PubMed one of their study designs that they put through, and it's overwhelming. I mean,
I met him. What was his name again?
Alain Blot.
Ilan, yeah. And his dog?
Oso.
Was it?
Oso the dog. Yeah.
Oso,
yeah. So, but I mean, it's there. The proof is there. It works. So that's why maybe we sometimes sound bullish when we're like, we're going to do this because, well, it's already been done. Now we just have to do it with an American face. And I mean, some of the things, so I encourage people, like, Google Niametic and look at some of their YouTube videos. And I compared a lot to the movie Awakenings with Robin Williams and Robert De Niro, and where basically the nurse at in Bali who works at Niametic, she was working in a senior citizen community, and you had a lot of these senior citizens just basically gripped up in their chairs, not really having great life or doing anything, and just kind of looked like they're prisoners in their own body. When she started giving them medical cannabis, you saw the light come back into their eye, and they're able to move their hands, and they're smiling, and they're having food. And it was like, I mean, right then and there, you're like, this stuff works. It does good.
Yeah.
And they went through and did all the stuff, and they showed that it works. So now we just got to do it here, and we will.
I know the stigma is still there, and it's not for everyone. And you and I are, I'm the first to say that it's not for everyone, whatever, if it's a stigma, religious reasons, or maybe it doesn't work. Sometimes cannabis doesn't work for everybody.
Exactly.
But at least give them an option. I mean, like right now, cannabis is legal in 38 states, I believe.
Yep.
And growing. And I just think the education needs to be out there of the benefits and how it works within the body. It's there, I should say. Yeah. It's there. And you ran into this with our own Congress here. Didn't they say, yes, go for it, but you need to do this on American soil with American veterans, supportive, data. And then what was the other one here? Oh, with American physicians.
Yep. 100%.
So what go into that?
Yeah, it was literally like a special operations mission.
Yeah.
Like, we're here. I don't know how you're gonna do it, but this needs to get done. And you're like, okay. So, I walked out of the meeting like, not a problem. Then I walked when I closed the door, I'm like, how the hell am I gonna do this? And like I said, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Things started moving when I met Alain, and we were at a UCLA cannabis symposium in 2017. Probably the best coffee break of my life. I just go out there and have some coffee. I get introduced to Alain. I started talking about my background, what I want to do. He got really excited. We set up a meeting, probably talked for about 4 hours the first time, and we started going forward with trying to get this to happen. And, then Alain, as things started happening and we were getting our study design put together, Alain's the one who found Dr. Dominguez before she took a job with UC Irvine. And then basically they had to have a talk with UC Irvine. UC Irvine said, okay, we're okay with this. I mean, 2 years ago, like to your point, 2 years ago, this would never have happened.
Yeah.
No way university would have touched this. But now they're starting to see the benefits and seeing the overwhelming popularity, I think, that people are embracing cannabis. And now everything's just kind of coming together, and we're just going to finalize some funding, and away we go. And I think we're going to really change some history here with this one. And, I'm just, like I said, after I saw UC Irvine yesterday, I mean, I probably walked out. I think I cried for about 5 minutes because you're like, holy hell, we're doing this.
Yeah.
And, now we just want to get it up and going and just prove it. And I think within the next couple of years, I really think there's going to be a big paradigm shift here in medicine for our vets.
So that was my next question. What do you say to the people, the naysayers that are out there, the individuals, the groups, the organizations that say, give me a break. This isn't medicine. This isn't medicine, and, I get I receive those, and it's like, gosh, man, it's just disappointing that, and I know it's not for everybody. So what is it medicine? Are you seeing this?
100% it's medicine. I mean, like I said, I'm sure you have talked to enough people. I've talked to people who've survived cancer by using cannabis.
I mean, that's how we got on this platform back in 2010, 11.
Yeah.
Corinne's dad had stage 4 lung to brain.
Yeah.
And we didn't know the medical benefits yet. We knew appetite stimulation.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
thought, great, let's try this. 40% of cancer patients pass on malnutrition before cancer takes over their body. So let's at least let him eat so he doesn't starve to death and just wasting and wasting and wasting. And so,
100%.
We came out of the gate with a grand slam.
Yeah.
Seeing the benefits.
And that's tremendous. And that's where I think where people always say it's a gateway drug. And I'll agree with them. I'm like, it is a gateway. It's a gateway for these veterans to live a life of peace that they deserve. And I always tell people this. I'm like, during times of war, it is the military that'll fight the battles, and it is up to then Congress or the politicians to make the peace. And right now, I mean, listen, politicians are doing what they're going to do. That's fine. But what we did is we put the weight on our back. We got to fight, and we're going to set the terms and set the conditions on the battlefield. And everyone wants peace. No one wants peace more than the people fighting. But once we have the conditions set, that's when we'll look back at Congress and say, we've done all that. We fought the battle. Now we're asking you to make the peace, not peace with like a foreign country or something of that nature. Let these men and women live a life of peace that they more than deserve.
How can people help you?
Sure. So if you go onto our website, www.hvgcompany.com, there is a locator map we have on there. So you can literally go on there and put in your area code, and it's going to tell you where the nearest dispensary is that carries Helmand Valley Growers Company product. And then also too, people really love the brand, which has been funny. I mean, we kind of joke like, here we are running around the Helmand province, and somehow a big cannabis brand was going to be born from this. It's just kind of something we weren't thinking about. So that's when we said, well, hey, we want to get another revenue stream. Let's get out a clothing line. And, thank you for your purchase of that one.
Hey, I bought it, and Bryan did not give me this. I bought it, and I was happy to do so. Yeah.
So we've had a lot of people going out and buying our product, our gear and everything like that, where we can ship that to all 50 states or international. So that's been great too. And then if people just want to help out and donate, even if you're not for cannabis, I mean, what we do with Battle Brothers Foundation is a 3-tier approach of personal, medical, and economic. Personal side, it's more of a big brother, big sister network, just kind of having someone there that has transition. You can sit and talk with them. On the medical side, we do VA disability benefits. If a veteran's suffering with opiate or alcohol or post-traumatic stress or all the above, we have treatment centers that we can send them to. Obviously, we're doing medical cannabis research. And then the last part being economic is we want to find a veteran a job. So they have that sense of purpose like they did in the military, with the hopes of avoiding a mistake they can't come back from. And, what I find really, really great too is not only are we having a lot of fun doing what we're doing, we're all back together, and we know we're serving a higher purpose. But now I get to go meet with some veteran groups where guys might be amputees or they're suffering from post-traumatic stress. And one of the things I always press on them is like, hey, you always have a second act. What you did in the military was amazing. That's great. And we're all thankful, and we'll always be thankful. But that doesn't mean that has to define you, and that was the pinnacle of your life. Go find that next act.
Totally.
And that's what we were able to do here with Helmand Valley, where we all were kind of floundering, just kind of bored living in corporate America. But now here we are. We don't make a lot of money, but that's okay. We're happy. I mean, ramen noodles and peanut butter and jelly are great, go for it. But that's where I just tell people to challenge yourself and just don't sit back and say, well, I'm a vet and I have post-traumatic stress and I just got to sit here and be miserable. Absolutely not. There's always something else you can do out there. You just have to have that personal courage and that intestinal fortitude to go find it and go make it happen.
Let me talk about, and I'll let you go here shortly, is when you say find someone a job, it's not just coming in and maybe it's a good match where they come work with you at HGVC. Mm-hmm. But can you talk about, there are other major companies that have come in and said, hey, we hire veterans, and you put these guys together. Can you talk about one example of the mechanic over at Mercedes-Benz?
Yeah, no, exactly. So, we really, what we kind of do is almost like that high school guidance counselor, like, here's $1 million. What do you want to do with your life? And just find out what drives them. And that's the thing where you got, people want to be mechanics. Well, Mercedes-Benz is a very complex and an expensive piece of gear, and they do a great internship program. And if you get through it, you're going to be a Mercedes mechanic and you're going to make some good money and doing what you like. So we had one up there, Laguna, that was helping us out. And then also too, it's like, we got a lot of friends who have other nonprofits. So we don't want to replicate what we're doing. Sometimes we're like, hey, you got this course going on. Can we send one of our vets over there to work with you and we'll pay for it? And they're like, not a problem. And so we just really want to find the best match for that individual veteran. We really want to customize the Battle Brothers experience to what they need. Sometimes people are just looking for jobs. Some just want to be part of the research. Some need everything, and we'll be there to help out the best way we can. But it's been really exciting, especially too with some of our friends that we served with, where they're like, hey, I really don't know what I should do right now. What advice you guys got for me? And we kind of help mentor them and get them into the next spot and watch them go do great things.
Letting them know that they're not alone. I think that's the number one, that's the hardest thing. And grief counseling. I mean, I've been doing grief counseling, and it's nice to know that I'm not alone, that my thoughts aren't just my own thoughts.
Yeah.
People are like, and I'm thinking, God, I'm experiencing that exact same thing as well. And so I applaud you and what you and your band of brothers and sisters, I'll say that as well, are doing. Let me just read for what the Battle Brothers Foundation stands for. Battle Brothers Foundation is a 501c3 charitable organization that empowers veterans through community-based personal development, economic, upper mobility, as well as progressive medical treatments to better their lives and the lives of their families. You can make a difference in a veteran's life today by pledging a donation or joining the team dedicated volunteers. And again, you can find them at hvgcompany.com, hvgcompany.com. And any closing words, Bryan? I really so appreciate the time we spent here, not only here today, but our last two outings together as well.
Yeah, no, hey, it's been an honor to meet you. I know we met way back when the MCRAA thing, I think that was back in February or March. And just really thank you for your friendship and just, giving us an opportunity to share our story and our mission. Really means a lot to us.
Well, you're doing good, and living life by paying it forward is something that we've done in our personal and private life as well as our public life. And so it sounds like you guys are doing the same. And God bless you, my friend. Really,
sure,
God bless you and your wife and family, and wishing you many, many years. To get emotional here, but many, many years together, man.
Really appreciate that.
Thank you. And everybody, I really hope you enjoyed this, and because I certainly have. Stay tuned. There's a lot more coming between Bryan, his organization, United Patients Group, but take a look at their company. They're doing good and paying it forward to those in need as well. And thank you to all veterans out there for doing what you do and serving our country, as well as taking a stance and really believing in what you believe in doing and why it's important. So everybody, Bryan Buckley.
Thank you, sir.
Helmand Valley Growers Club and the Battle Brothers Foundation. This is John Malanca with the United Patients Group. Be informed and be well, and we'll see you soon. Have a blessed day, everyone. Bye-bye. Hi, John Malanca here with the United Patients Group. I hope you've enjoyed our videos. Please click like as well as subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Also, follow us on Twitter at Patients Group and on Facebook at United Patients Group, as well as for our podcast. Please click the link in the description below. We'll see you there. Bye-bye.